All right. Ready? Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to our Chief, Tom Quinlan, to City Attorney Zach Klein, our Council President Shannon Harden. The last few weeks, our residents, our neighbors, have spoken out in pain, frustration, and anger about the need for police reform. I want you to know we hear you and we are taking action. Today, we're announcing two important steps in police reform in Columbus. The first is a Chiefs Advisory Panel to allow residents to have input into policies and procedures and reforms for the Columbus Division of Police. I'd like to invite Police Chief Tom Quinlan to tell us a little bit more about the panel. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor Ginther. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. I want to assure the community that the Columbus Division of Police is committed to making positive change, to taking input from the community and adapting our police policies and tactics to better meet community expectations. One of the many critical recommendations from the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission is to carry forward the work of the commission and to continue to engage the community in shaping how the division can better serve the public. Last week, we committed to forming a civilian review board by the end of the year. But in the meantime, we are forming the Chiefs Advisory Panel to help make meaningful change now and in the days ahead. The advisory panel is designed to allow community stakeholders to have a meaningful way to provide input into strategies, development of community policing practices, and increasing community transparency into police operations. The panel is intended to provide a forum for discussions regarding community concerns using a method of allowing a broad spectrum of viewpoints to be represented and considered by the chief when establishing policies, priorities, or strategies. The panel will serve many roles. It will act as a sounding board for me regarding community needs, concerns, and expectations, as well as provide community feedback to current and proposed police programs and priorities. It will serve as a direct conduit between the chief's office that establishes policy and the community who wish to voice how policies are impacting the community. We may call upon the panel to attend public gatherings with police personnel to help educate the community about the function and role of Columbus police officers and help clarify not just the what police do, but also the why. This panel will meet monthly, with the first beginning in July. I know that we are living in unsettling times, but I believe in the future of Columbus and in creating a division of police the community can be proud of. Thank you, Mayor Ginther. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Chief. Columbus City Council and I have selected 14 members to the panel that's been described, the advisory panel. Abib Asim, Vice Chair of the Create Columbus Commission. Lourdes Barrasso de Pella, Director of the Latina Mentoring Academy. J. Love Benton, Vice Chair of Black Out and Proud. James Burke IV, President of Columbus National Pan-Hellenic Council. Deshaun Carter, Chief Diversity Officer at Franklin County Children's Services and Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commissioner. Stephanie Coe, who's a commissioner on the Civil Service Commission. Yavis Ellis, Pastor and Director of Community Affairs at Urban One. Tammy Fournier, Founder, People's Justice Project and Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commissioner. Florence Latham, Human Resources Consultant and Executive Coach. Christy McCrae, Associate Professor at Otterbein University, Diane Mensna, Partner at Ice Miller, Andrew B. Pierce II, undergraduate student, John Glenn College of Public Affairs at The Ohio State University, Randall Sistrunk, Director of Development, Orange Barrel Media, and Aaron Upchurch, the Executive Director of Kaleidoscope Youth Center. We're grateful to this diverse group for committing to making change in our community. I want to make clear this important point. This is not just a commission or committee that will sit idly by. The Chiefs panel will weigh in immediately and provide feedback and guidance on changes we are making, including the significantly limiting the use of tear gas and pepper spray by the Columbus Division of Police. I have directed Chief Quinlan to complete a thorough review of how chemical spray agents are deployed by police and to immediately stop the use of tear gas and pepper spray to disperse non-aggressive, non-violent crowds. Let me be clear. Tear gas and pepper spray will no longer be used to break up peaceful protests, period. This is in direct response from what we heard from the community and what we saw ourselves in the last few weeks following the death of George Floyd. Last week, the city signed the Obama Pledge, which commits the city to review police use of force policies, engage the community to include a diverse range of input, experiences, and stories in our review, report the findings, and most important, reform our community's police use of force policies. Today, we're taking concrete steps to change our use of force policies and have assembled a diverse group of community members to help us make additional needed changes in the days ahead, to change how we police, and to answer the calls of the public to make meaningful and lasting police reforms. I want to thank City Attorney Zach Klein and his office for all of their guidance and support, and invite him to speak to his efforts to advise the changes announced today and those we will make working together in the days and weeks ahead. City Attorney Klein.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, and to the police chief and the council president also on the line. I want to recognize the efforts for change that you are demonstrating, everyone on this call, the police chief, the council president, the mayor, for the necessary reforms in addressing not only what many of us saw and were troubled and concerned about in the way the city handled its response to the protests over the past 2 weeks, but also not forgetting the underlying reason why people are protesting. And I think the important change of directive and policy as it relates to the use of chemical agents like pepper spray to clear the streets is one that is a significant step forward, and one that I know caused a lot of questions and concerns to be raised based on eyewitness accounts and news accounts that we've seen over the past couple weeks. Prior to these changes, as it relates to CPD policy, the use of pepper spray was a permissible use for the sole reason of someone stepping into the street. And with the policy changes and working with the mayor's office and the chief, and something that the Safety Commission, Matrix, and even my own office announced as the roles as the Columbus City Attorney, limiting the dispersion of pepper spray to non-violent, non-aggressive crowds is troublesome. So making sure that we completely change the policy so that chemicals like pepper spray are not used unless the crowd is aggressive and violent, I think is an important step forward to rebuild the trust, and based on what the community has told us, that the way we should be policing in our city. And so we've actually added a specific language over the concern that many in our community have had. I share that concern of being able to, for police being able to deploy pepper spray for the sole reason of, stepping into the street or being in the street. We're adding explicit language and working with the Division of Police to add this language that failure to leave a street or to move by itself shall not justify the use of a chemical spray against a non-aggressive, non-violent crowd. I think that is an important step forward to rebuild the trust with the community, to outline and detail the way that we want to be policed, and the way that handling, which I believe these protests aren't going to die down anytime soon. The issues may change, but the reality is people want change. They demand change, and we have to bring them the change that they desire. And this step forward will allow us to institute policing as it relates to nonviolent, non-aggressive protests to ensure that their First Amendment rights can be protected, and at the same time balance that against public safety for all in the community. So I appreciate the opportunity to join you, Mayor and Police Chief and Council President. And I think the commission that is being formed will also not only help address current protesting concerns in addition to the ones that we announced today, but also will not let us forget the underlying reasons why people are protesting. Thank you.
I think Council President Harden, we're so excited to have you join us and appreciate all of your hard work on many of the reforms that we're sharing publicly today. I wanted to offer you an opportunity to make some comments, President Harden.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, and to City Attorney Klein. I want to recognize my colleagues, many of whom are on this call as well. As been said, we are at a watershed moment, a time when Columbus and the country has the opportunity to dream about what public safety could be. New ideas, models, and frameworks are being shared widely. And in order to capture this moment and create the real change in our city, we need to establish new safety institutions and practices. And this reform process won't be easy nor simple. That's why it's critical to have the brilliant, caring community leaders at the table to ensure we're moving towards a community-based vision for safety. And not only will this group keep the chief and us public officials accountable, but they will be able to help keep the public informed as well. This advisory panel has an important role to help reform public safety in our city. They'll be critical in crafting a civilian review board and establishing independent investigations. I'm also excited that the city and Mayor Ginther isn't waiting to make additional reforms. Having experienced this firsthand, I know we need to change the use of crowd dispersal techniques and stop spraying tear gas into peaceful crowds. The negative impacts far outweigh the temporary control it gives officers. And so I'm happy that the mayor is making the changes just announced, but we know there is much more work to be done. And I look forward to working with my colleagues on City Council, with our Safety Chair, Mitch Brown, with the mayor, his team, and all those community partners who are committed to real change, real reform, so we can make sure that we have a police force that is trusted and has the legitimacy to keep us all safe in this community, something that we desperately need. Thank you so much for your leadership and look forward to the work that lies ahead.
Thank you, Council President Harden, and thanks to Chief Quinlan, City Attorney Klein, and to all who have agreed to serve on the Chief's panel for change and reform. The work will be hard. Change is difficult, but the time to act is now. There is an urgent need to take advantage of this moment in time and momentum to build upon the great work peaceful protesters across this nation and in this city to make the change we all seek and we all know is right. We're committed to 21st century policing that will look very different than it does today, but that better serves everyone in our community. Now I'd like to open the floor to questions from the press. You should have all received instructions via the media alert, but let me go through them. You should see a hand button next to your name. Click on that to raise your hand. We'll unmute you one at a time to answer your questions. Be sure to unclick the hand after we've answered the questions and click it again if you have another question or a follow-up. So if we could just have each member of the press introduce themselves and their news organizations, and then we'll be happy to answer your question. Our first reporter, Kayla Merchant.
Hi, not a member of the press here. The question that I had was whether the Chiefs Council would be willing to examine and research implementing the Truth and Justice Initiative in the city of Columbus, as was piloted in other cities across the country in 2016. Thank you.
I didn't hear much of your question. I'm not sure. We might have a bad connection. Could I ask you to repeat the question?
Sure, no problem. Just wanted to ask whether the Chiefs Council will be willing to examine possibly implementing the Truth and Justice Initiative in Columbus, as was piloted in other cities across the country.
Did somebody else get the question? I could not hear the question.
I did, Mayor. Can you hear me okay, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so the beauty of this panel is that the members of the panel were selected by the mayor and city council. I had no input. In fact, I'm learning the names today. So that's what the benefit of this panel is going to be. Very diverse in age and portions of the city. So whatever they want to bring to the table is what we're going to discuss. We will have an agenda, of course, and stay on track and get progress made. But the goal is to allow them to bring what the community's expectations are to my attention and kind of be your representative on the panel so we can have constructive conversations. So basically anything that they want to bring to my attention is on the table for discussion. We'll take it from there.
Our next question is from Zach Colasar.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
So in regards to the talking about the language that is going to be put forward to not disperse pepper spray and tear gas on people who are peacefully protesting, is language going to be enough? Do we need to look at training officers in order to teach them situations not to use pepper spray and tear gas?
So which news organization were you with?
614 Magazine.
614 Magazine. Great. Thanks. I think obviously having the policies and the directive from the mayor is critically important. It gives very clear direction to the chief and to our officers. I think, making sure that the chief is given that clear guidance, direction, provided the training, and also having our officers know that they'll be held accountable if they don't follow the policies and directives of the chief and the mayor. I know that, I'm accountable to the community, and I'm going to hold the chief accountable, through community expectations and standards. But Chief Quillen, do you want to make any comments about additional training or directives that officers may need regarding these specific directives?
Yes, sir. Anytime we release new policy, it is done in a electronic format where officers must go online and acknowledge an affirmative acknowledgement that they've received the policies and they understand it. We always train to policy. So the training that we incorporate this year for continuing professional training will incorporate this portion of the training, and we will train to that policy.
Our next question is from Nick Evans. Nick?
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is Nick Evans with WOSU. I wanted to ask you sort of the devil's in the details here. When it comes to peaceful protests, I know temperatures have cooled significantly, but early on when we were seeing tear gas and pepper spray used, it was often these large groups, like 100+ people, and then one or two in the back, maybe throw a water bottle or something else. And then you see broad dispersal of pepper spray. So, I mean, I think to most outside observers, the bulk of that group is peaceful, but there are one or two individuals who are not being so. So, I mean, in that situation, is it going to be just the same as it has been? Are police still going to be using pepper spray in an instance like that where, you know, largely it is a peaceful gathering?
Well, Nick, I think, I want to be very clear here that, tear gas and pepper spray will no longer be used to break up peaceful protests. Your specific question about a very small number of folks engaging in violence or putting officers at risk while they're still largely a peaceful protest, I'll let the chief respond to. But certainly what we saw leading up to, particularly on Saturday and to a certain extent into that first weekend, was tear gas and pepper spray being used indiscriminately, sometimes for as minor things as folks stepping out into the street. And we're making a change in approach and policy and direction, and we'll have additional input and guidance from this advisory group on other policies and procedures. But I guess for the specific instance that Nick is describing, Chief, can you walk us through how that situation would be handled?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Nick. I want to basically say, bottom line is, we get it. We understand the community's expectations have changed from what they want to see their police force in the city of Columbus that serves them handle these situations differently. We get it. We are developing different tactics and different ideas on how to focus on the people in the crowd without going through and revealing specific tactics. Because again, a lot of times people will counter our tactics, so we don't want to release those. But we are developing ways to be able to isolate people who are committing criminal acts of violence and go in and remove them from the crowd and allow the people who are there to have their message heard, remain in the area, and be able to speak freely, so we can provide a safe environment for them to do that. Remember, when people throw stuff at the police and assault police, that may also hit people in the crowd. So we want to make sure we do what we can to provide a safe environment for them to be able to get their message out. We get it.
Bennett Haberly?
Yes, thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, this is Bennett Haberly with WBNS 10 TV. I have a bit of a two-parter, so bear with me. Mayor, I believe in the early days of the protest, you said that Columbus police officers showed tremendous restraint. So my question is, what changed in your mind to lead to this policy change? And then the second part, is Chief Quinlan on board with this, or is there any dissent from CPD?
Well, I appreciate the question, because you are right. Early on in what I saw, Thursday and Friday evening, I thought it was a great deal of restraint from officers who were on the receiving end, not only of verbal abuse and harassment, but physical aggression from folks that, again, were not part of the overwhelming majority of peaceful protests. What I saw play out, particularly during the course of Saturday, was, what I thought was overly aggressive and inappropriate and not at meeting my or the community's standards for engaging peaceful protesters. The stories, the videos, the calls, the images that I saw, particularly that Saturday, in the way that peaceful protesters were engaged, particularly, in and around the State House in the late morning and early afternoon hours. That's when I called the chief and I shared with the chief very directly that our approach wasn't meeting my or the community's expectations and had to change. And I think there was a significant change in approach after that conversation and direction that I gave to the chief. But I've heard loud and clear from the people of Columbus that tear gas and pepper spray used indiscriminately with peaceful protesters is not acceptable. And I told folks from the very beginning, it was very important for me and for us to acknowledge when mistakes are made, acknowledge those mistakes, and own the change and remedy required in order to restore community and the public trust. And that's what we're all about, with the series of changes and reforms that we've already shared, that we're going to continue to share, and why we're forming this advisory council. To the second part, I'll let the chief answer that question.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo what the mayor said, that there was tremendous restraint used, considering that 187 police officers were injured in this, in the subsequent days that we experienced here in Columbus. And it is a felony crime to assault a police officer. So there was restraint used. The bottom line is, did we get it right 100% of the time? And the answer is no. We did not get it right every time. But we are committed to finding new ways to engage the public during protests that will get better results and where we can get it right. Technology changes so much over my career, but it's been incremental. Currently, technology is changing so fast. What new devices, what new ways of engaging people are out there? For instance, we now use what's called an LRAD, long-range acoustic device, to make sure our dispersal orders are very clear and can be heard over all types of noise level in the crowd. So what else is out there that we can use to have a better engagement with the public and get it right every time? And that's what we're committed to doing.
Our next question is from Lisa Rentala.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. Lisa Rentala from ABC6 and Fox 28. My question, the national narrative right now is defunding police departments. We're hearing cities across the country looking at cutting portions of their police departments. What is the city of Columbus looking to do? Are you looking at budget cuts? Are you looking at cutting the number of officers? Are you looking at maybe cutting some of the military-like equipment used by the police department?
Well, I'll let the council president speak to this as well as the leader of the legislative branch, but I'll speak on behalf of the administration. I don't believe in defunding the police. I do believe that we want to create a 21st century, best-in-class, community-based policing organization. We are not that today. And based on the recommendations of the Safety Advisory Commission, that 2/3 of which are in process of being implemented, the additional oversight and accountability that's going to come through the panel that we announced today, as well as the Civilian Review Board, are just some of the steps that we are taking to make us a more community-oriented policing organization. I believe that that is going to require funding different initiatives and different programs than the status quo, and to get our division of police to protecting and serving everyone, not over-policing any particular community or group. That is going to require significant change, and we believe that it's going to take resources. I also believe that we are asking our police officers to do too much. You have people calling 911 and the police for things that, quite honestly, could be dealt with in different ways. And I think that we need to have a conversation as a community, and the council president and I and other members have started this conversation. And there are programs out there where potentially we could deal with mental health situations and other needs that are reported into the city in different ways, and they're different models. Right here in Columbus, the REACT model, dealing with those that are struggling with addiction that have overdose. Police is one part of that, but we have firefighters, treatment specialists, and others that go to those scenes and calls for service as opposed to just uniformed police officers. And is it time for us to think about that approach into other types of non-life threatening, violent situations where we can use more tools and additional perspective and training and background in social work de-escalation and mediation. And so those are things that I'm going to continue to focus on in partnership with City Council to make our police organization that best in class, best practice model for community policing, but also looking at other ways that we can meet needs in our community without solely relying on law enforcement personnel to answer every single call. Council President Harden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the mayor hit on it right when we asked as a community, are we demanding too much out of our police officers? The mayor had it right. We are asking them to solve the opioid crisis, to solve poverty, to solve mental health issues. And we do have models right here in Columbus that give us a pathway forward. I mean, the question is, a year from now, if the Columbus Division of Police looks and acts and feels the same way as it does today, then we have not done the appropriate reform. We are going to come together as a community and talk about what safety in Columbus looks like. And I think that does include talking about demilitarization and making sure that we are leading together as a community, and that safety is what safety is what the community is asking for, and not over policing and not using excessive tactics. And so, today's announcements are really good first steps in those directions. And I look forward to working with the mayor, to my council members, and to the mayor's point, listening to the community and this advisory group to give us those intermediate steps to get us to an even better police system in our community.
City Attorney Klein, do you have any additional comments or thoughts on that question?
Thank you, Mayor. My office as always is prepared to assist the mayor, your office and council. I agree that when we call 911, we want police to be able to respond. But firsthand, we see down at the municipal court and our prosecutors, we have asked the justice system, which includes police, prosecutors, judges, and even the jail and penal system. We've asked them to deal with issues in our community that we have decided collectively, not just in the city of Columbus, but across this country, that we've pushed on the justice system to handle: homelessness, mental health, drug addiction. And those may not be, and I think we're coming to the realization as a community and as a society and a country, those aren't the things that need to be funded and dealt with directly by law enforcement. And being able to have resources that deal with homelessness, to deal with addiction, that deal with mental health, and have it being staffed appropriately and responded to appropriately, I think is part of the global conversation of how we rethink the justice system. And so we are doing that now in the city attorney's office down at the courthouse. Like, for example, looking at the underlying reasons why people commit crime, the root reasons of crime, and focusing on recidivism and not conviction rates. This is a place where, taking a step back and treating not only drug addiction, but, pairing up folks, and we're piloting it and working in big box theft, but like, why are they stealing? Is it food insecurity, housing insecurity, employment issues? And how we give those people the tools they need outside the criminal justice system by experts in their field who have the resources available right in their own community to lift them up and give them the chances and opportunities they deserve to have to be the moms and dads they want to be, and be people in return back to our society as productive taxpayers. So we have the opportunity, I think, now in this really precious moment to exponentially change the way not only we want police to interact with our community, but how we deal with issues that traditionally have been pushed onto the justice system and probably don't belong there in the long term.
Thank you, City Attorney. Our next question is from Sean Lanier. Sean?
This is Sean Lanier with NBC4. Just a question about the advisory panel. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but just talk about the qualifications that went into forming this panel. And then what is the true expectation of this panel? Is it just to simply relay messages from the community on things that they can improve on, or are they supposed to be pushing for policy change within the Division of Police that we will see here on the streets of Columbus?
Well, I appreciate the question, Sean, and since council was responsible for part of the appointments, I'll let the president speak to their thoughts around criteria and qualifications when they were putting folks forward. But what I was looking for was folks that represented the community, folks that quite honestly have been very critical and have shared their criticism with me, with the Division of Police, but they want a better Division of Police. They want a more responsive Division of Police. They want a Division of Police that is meeting and exceeding communities' expectations and that want to be part of the change and the reform that we seek to make. And they're committed to doing the hard work, rolling up their sleeves and delving into the policies and procedures that guide the work of the Division of Police. I will tell you that clearly there are lots of recommendations that are in the Safety Advisory Commission's 80 recommendations. We have the matrix recommendations, but I think what the chief and I have heard loud and clear is there are many priorities, but there are top priorities. And we expect this advisory council to help the chief on those top priorities. As he talked about, engagement with public, use of chemical agents, how we conduct and interact with peaceful protesters, how we engage with the community in a different way. There are going to be many different things that they visit, but we've heard very clearly there are things they need to address right away with the chief to make sure that the public has confidence in the way that the Division of Police is engaging the community. And they've been made very clear to us. But that's what I was looking for, and I think that this group, with the great additions of City Council, are going to help the chief do just that. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much more to add. I think the one thing that I would note is autonomy. As the chief said, we didn't consult with him when we put this group together. These are folks who we believe bring a diverse background from HR consulting to criminal law and folks who are just in the community who have the ear of our neighbors. But they're not connected to or directed by any of us, the mayor, my council members, the chief, or anyone else. And so they will be loose to give their direct opinions and insight to the chief and feedback back and forth between the chief and the community. And I think that that's what we really wanted were folks with independent voices and clear voices that could share their information and insight with our police chief.
Thank you, Council President. Next question is Dan Perlman. Dan?
Hey, Mayor, Dan Perlman with NBC4. I wanted to talk with you about the use of tear gas and pepper spray. What types of punishments or repercussions could an officer face if they do use that on a peaceful protest?
Sure. And as you know, Dan, we're reviewing police conduct. A number of folks shared information with our internal affairs division, and those investigations and reviews have started to take place, as well as report CPD at columbus.gov, which is actually being reviewed by folks outside of the chain of command. As you know, some folks don't have confidence in the internal affairs process and the police policing themselves. And so we offered that alternative where the EEO officer, assistant safety director, the deputy director in public safety, and a faith leader, Eric Brown from the Near East Side, are all reviewing those things that came into report CPD at columbus.gov. And those recommendations on both administrative and potentially criminal charges will be coming to the chief, the safety director, and myself through that channel. Chief, I guess you probably can speak to what would happen now that we've made this change in policy and direction if officers did not follow it in the future. I think that's your question, Dan. What happens once this policy is in place and an officer does not follow it? Is that correct, Dan?
Yes.
Chief?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you, Dan. So every use of force must be reported by policy. Officers must report the use of force. A use of force is then investigated, and if the investigation determines that the force used was outside of policy, then any outside of policy use of force is considered critical misconduct. We have a contract that we must follow the due process of what steps we have to take, but the end result is the same. It is critical misconduct, and they would be held accountable based on our discipline system, and it would be an action of record, and we are fully committed to investigating and taking appropriate action to hold officers accountable when they get it wrong, when they use force that is not authorized.
I don't know, City Attorney Klein, anything additional that insight you would add to the chief's comments about Dan's question?
Mayor, as it relates specifically to the instance of the past couple of weeks, my office, at the request of safety and the Division of Police, are sitting in to review the actions that have been submitted to your hotline. We're going through those, all video evidence, photographs, statements associated with them, and making a determination of how those are then going to be processed, essentially being in 3 buckets. The first, within policy and its permissible conduct. The second being out of policy and needs to be reviewed for potential administrative discipline or employment related discipline. And the third bucket being out of policy, rising to level for criminal investigation. And so that is currently, as you noted, Mayor, ongoing. It has started as early or as started late last week. There have been lots of submissions, and we're taking this very seriously, and we'll continue to take it seriously to ensure the appropriate steps and are taken, that accountability is ultimately had between the allegations and the misconduct.
Thank you, City Attorney Klein. I think that is all the questions. I want to encourage folks from the press, if there are any additional questions that they may have, Robin Davis in my office or Lee Cole in the or with the city attorney to get those questions answered. Really appreciate everybody being with me, with us today to share this information. I want to thank Council President Hardin, City Attorney Klein, and Chief Quinlan, and look forward to continuing to share changes and reforms that we are making, responding to the calls for justice from the community and for a police organization that exceeds our community's expectations, which we know we are not at there today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Look forward to being with you again.